Uh, Good morning, colleagues, and we start our work. The first topic is first anniversary of Donbas universities being displaced. How does their future look like? The speakers are Oleksiy Ryabchyn, director of Coordination Center for IDPs of Luhansk and Donetsk regions, Oleksandr Kulga, and Viktor Artemenko, expert on issues of students' government. Good morning, dear colleagues. I'm Ryabchyn Oleksiy, Batkivschyna faction, Donetsk. I am concerned with the issues of IDP and I help 16 higher educational institutions to survive and to thrive. And a year ago, we had a massive displacement of higher educational institutions from the occupied territory to the territory that is controlled by the Ukrainian state. And many went to their affiliations, and some of them moved to other regions, to Vinnytsia, Kryvyi Rog, Nikolaev, Kharkiv, etc. And these higher institutions are in different conditions. Some of them used these challenges in order to not to just remain in Ukraine, but to develop themselves. But many of these institutions are dying, and I think that Ukraine and government, they should decide whether they need quality education in Donbas and in occupied Donbas that we want to return. And I have 3 questions that need solving, that illustrate the picture. And the first issue is the absence of housing for students and teachers of these institutes. There's no hostels, there's no lecture rooms, and many of these teachers and students are patriotic, and they can even pay for their education, but they can't do it if they rent some flat. And Donetsk University was displaced, and the costs in the market are high for students and teachers, and that's why I saw myself, I traveled to these, I visited half of these institutions, and I saw the condition. And I saw that they have hostels that require minimum investments, repair of roofs, hot water supply, or these hostels can be used both for teachers and students. And we can solve the situation by the draft law that was adopted in the Verkhovna Rada, that the transfer of funds that now are in the occupied territory to controlled territory. It's about 1.5 billion hryvnias for Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast. Part of this money can be transferred for the needs of these institutions. I addressed the governor and the head of civil and military administration in order to solve this question. But not only material state is the problem. There's also no legislative basis and assistance from the side of the state. There's a provision 65 about saving funds and the provision forbids all state institutions to use these funds for some repair. And we know corruption level in local government, in prosecutors' offices and tax offices. But for displaced institutions, this is the need that they should just survive. And I thank the President, Prime Minister, that they solved this issue. And 2 weeks ago, at the Cabinet of Ministers, this provision for the for displaced universities was cancelled, but they spent a year just to cancel this bureaucratic procedure. The question is also about debt, salaries and wages and are not paid. And scholarship also are not paid, and there should be guarantees for those who live in the ATO area. And in the end, at the end provisions, they say that the Cabinet of Ministers developed a plan how to pay the scholarships and salaries in this area. It's about all IDPs, but the law that was adopted in January and the Cabinet of Ministers had to make the secondary legislation. These decisions are still at the Cabinet of Ministers, and people can't get this money. And if we are able to get back Donetsk and Luhansk, we have to think about reintegration of these institutions. This is an acute topic for us now. We see that it's highlighted in the media, but we should do it on our condition. Those deans and rectors who lied to their students and promising them golden hills and Russian diplomas, and they put flags of not of the state, not Ukrainian flags, but those teachers who stayed there because of family reasons and who were not involved in political process, who just worked there. They did their job, and they knew that students won't get the diplomas. These people should undergo some sort of check by commission that is composed from maybe some services, but for example, they can stay in an institution, but they won't occupy any positions, top positions. So we should work on our own conditions, and we should develop our plans with the IDPs, because many people struggle and show their patriotic position, and they show that they want to live in a free, independent Ukraine. And for me, if a country can invest in future, maybe it's a sign of maturity of power, and we should develop mass media and education, In order to create the conditions for return of the territories.
Kulga.
My name is Kulga Oleksandr. I'm a PhD in marketing and an associate professor and a coordinator at the Center for Coordination of IDPs from Luhansk and Donetsk region. Where this idea came from about the displaced higher educational institutions. 1 year has passed already, and all of us know that for a year Donetsk University now is hosted in Vinnytsia, but there are also other higher educational institutions which has been displaced, and we submitted an appeal that those higher educational institutions also require attention. And the Ministry of Education and the Cabinet of Ministers, they contributed to organizing a roundtable discussion where the stakeholders were multiple, rectors of those higher educational institutions and public administrations and the representatives of civil society. The problems were highlighted, what things should be done. And also they said that several decrees of the Cabinet of Ministers should be paid attention to. For example, the decree, the resolution number 1134. The resolutions have been disseminated upon this roundtable discussion. Then the coordination center was established, consisting of the initiative team, which is intended to develop the education. And the first task was to promote provision of budget-funded places for students, of IDP students. The next stage was to assist the Donetsk Postgraduate Studies Institute in consulting and getting licenses and accreditation. Then we also had one step to do. It was a ministerial event in Samsun, and Oleksiy Ryabchyn. They gathered the students, the self-governments of students, and they discussed such topics as hotels and 0.5% of funds, of university funds, to be spent for their own needs, and many other matters were addressed as well. Now the Coordination Center unites not only 16 displaced universities, we also communicate with NGOs from Donbas. Not so long ago, we talked to the Ministry of Justice, who assist us and who develop regulations which would help to recover and bring to the higher level the civil rights of the students and the staff of those universities. Also, the Coordination Center joined efforts with Чисті Виші, transparent higher educational institutions. We try to fight corruption. We put efforts into this. We try to eradicate the corruption. We need to eradicate it. Not so long ago, we also were one of organizers of the forum Crisis of IDP students and their votes, which was hosted in Vinnytsia. out of 30 representatives of self-government, students self-government, they were the students from displaced universities. All students were very satisfied with this event, and now they established their own NGO in order that they can promote their development, empower themselves. Now we work jointly with the committee of the Verkhovna Rada on the draft law on amendments to the customs law to advocate the rights of the displaced students and higher educational institutions. It would be about the equipment which can be supplied from foreign universities because some customs restrictions are now in place. Now we also negotiate with the British Council the exchange, the student sharing, the student scientific associations development and other areas. That's all it seems to me. Thank you, colleagues. My name is Viktor Artemenko. I'm an expert on issues of students' government. I would like to start with the education of a young person. This is a projection of our future, and displaced university students of these universities, they could hardly forecast, project their future. The conditions in which they work, they are really hard. But I would like to talk about the students who represent this student government. I would like to say that bodies of students' self-government, they were started from scratch. There were no premises, no teams, no knowledge, no capacity. They didn't know how student self-governments work. As for me, I in person held several meetings with those students, IDP students, and we communicated, we discussed the problems. Some of the problems were that students were not receiving salaries for half a year, their scholarships for half a year, and also during those meetings we tried to establish, to find out the main areas, to distribute the problems by areas. The first is document management with self-government, student self-government. The second issue was cooperation of student self-governments with the top management of the universities. Because these communications are only personnel now. The third category of problems concern a legislative framework underlying the operations of the student self-governments. So taking these three areas of problems, some problems can be addressed by self-governments themselves. Some problems could be tackled at the regional level, but also there are some issues to be addressed on the national level. What means could be used for the intra-university problems? In these 16 universities, students leaders should get training how to develop and operate projects. As concern student self-government, they also should get some workshops and trainings so that they can get knowledge how to position student self-governments, how to arrange mass actions, mass events. and how to advocate the rights of IDP universities, of displaced universities. And now we would like to address Oleksiy Ryabchyn and the Verkhovna Rada in general. Now Oleksiy Ryabchyn is here, and his other colleagues and the Ministry of Education and Science and the Committee of the Verkhovna Rada and the Center for Coordination of IDPs, all of them also address our problems of displaced universities. And I would like to summarize that education, this is a marketplace, and the students' self-government is a kind of trade union, and this trade union should operate in favorable conditions. Thank you.
I don't have questions, so do my colleagues. Yeah, right. 17th channel. Do you have some statistics? What institutes were displaced? What is the number of students? What patriots stayed in the occupied territory? So about statistics. We don't have statistics, but as to numbers, both of staff and students, we have some. It's about 1/3 of staff and students who left, who were displaced, who went together with the institutions, and there were some students and teachers who had possibility to move to other institutions in Ukraine, and approximately 3/4 went to Ukraine and 1/4 stayed. And as to support of those who stayed, unofficially, we don't communicate with those people who control the process there, but to those people who stayed, not because they didn't want to, but just because they didn't have an opportunity to do this. But we communicate with them, but it doesn't influence our work or their work. I want to add. So these displaced universities, they are attended by universities who studied in those so-called universities that are in the occupied territories. We saw the diplomas, they are interesting. I showed them to our European colleagues, and they were very surprised what is in it. And they say, let us, we have a baccalaureate diploma, and we want to continue our education and to obtain master's degree. But students have to study 1 year more to gain the knowledge, because we can't check the level of their knowledge. We don't know what they had in these universities, and they provide some programs together with Russian universities, or register their universities in Crimea, Simferopol. But I think that our employers, they will check the diplomas of 2015 that were issued in Donetsk and Luhansk in 2015. It's Maria, Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. Is there any statistics, or do you know some examples? If some students had to return to the occupied territory and continue education there because they lacked funds. There's no such statistics. We observe the situation, and now I don't know even a single example of this, that they return to the territory because they don't have funds and return to that territory. No, but I can't say for everyone. I didn't hear about such instances, but maybe maybe some person studied and then returned home in the occupied territory, but many institutions, they have a distance form of learning and they try to provide it. But maybe there could be such instances, but that a person went back to the occupied territory, was transferred there. No, I don't know. I don't know such instances, because you can't get the quality of education and the diploma, state diploma that provides you with a way to your future. If there's no other, there is a question. One more question. If we compare what institutions are in better condition and what institutions need urgent help. In my opinion, if we speak on the whole, 9 high institutions are provided with equipment of 30%, 5 institutions, they have no equipment at all. So they work, but they have to work on their own computers and buy some equipment for their own money. There are several institutions that need urgent help, but we can't say that others don't. So they all need help. And we address government and our state that they should pay attention to this issue. Not only material base creates institutions. There are people who work there, students who study there. This is our scientific potential that we have to develop and direct to the area that we want. And in order that they don't return to DPI or LPR, I can tell about those institutions that I visited. I spoke with rectors, and you can see and have your own opinion about it. Donetsk National University, that is in Vinnytsia, and Lugansk University, that is in Severodonetsk, and Lugansk, that is in Starobelsk. I visited them, and I think they used these challenges to the maximum. They have powerful teams that are able to attract donor funds and lobby their interests. They expect help not only from the state, but from international organizations, and it is natural. And other institutions, they are in a stable state, if we may say so. I was in Donetsk Medical University, that is in Kramatorsk. They had some problems. It's a specific institution. They need hospitals for practice for their students, and they had many students, foreign students, and they provided funds, and they have plans to use other territories to maybe open some affiliates in other oblast regions in order to help the students to have some practice. Machine Building Academy in Makiivka, they have an issue that they went to Kramatorsk, but they had a powerful institute in the city, and they compete. And there are some questions how to deal with competition. And the Luhansk Agrarian Institute that moved to Kharkiv, there's an issue that they use premises of Kharkiv institutions, and this displacement was made not by Ministry of Education but by the Ministry of Agricultural Policy. There's an issue how to help this institution to survive. They waited in Starobelsk, but there are some premises, but there is some competition, and this competition should lead to better results and help these institutions to stay.
In general, I would like to add how good things are or how bad things are. There are certain difficulties. As to the students' problems, there are some universities where debts, scholarship debts have already been repaid, and there are some institutions where the scholarships have not been paid for half a year. But when students came, they get the answers that the database remained at the occupied territories. So the situations in different universities differ. And I remembered one more case. It also concerned the Lugansk Higher Educational Institution. Their accounts was frozen because when they moved, there were some debts which were made at the occupied territory, but now their accounts are arrested, and the operations of this institution, higher educational institution, is now stopped because they can't pay because of those debts. So the assistance of government should be very specific and special in these cases which concern these displaced institutions. These institutions, they are very powerful themselves. They have enough capacity, but they should get assistance anyway. Thank you very much. We wish you all success, and we wish success to the displaced universities.